All right. So today we're diving deep into this Algo Academy blog post all about trial and error in algorithms.
Ooh, yeah, this is a good one.
I figured this one would be interesting, if you're uh, prepping for those tech interviews or, just kind of like brushing up on those coding skills.
Yeah.
Or if you're like me, you're just fascinated by what's going on behind the scenes in the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
So get ready because we're going to go deep on why trial and error is so crucial in the world of algorithms.
I think what's really interesting about this is that trial and error, it's not just like randomly trying things until something works.
Right.
It's really about approaching problem solving with this like structured mindset.
It's a mindset. So
Yeah.
you're saying it's not just about finding the right answer right away.
Exactly. I mean, in the real world of software development, that perfect first-time solution, it's super rare.
Yeah.
So it's really through this process of, trying, failing, learning, and refining.
Yeah.
That's how we actually develop those robust and efficient algorithms.
That makes a lot of sense. The blog post really emphasizes that trial and error is all about embracing that learning process, especially when things don't go as planned. It's like building resilience,
Absolutely. Each time you encounter a bug or, you hit a roadblock, it's like this opportunity,
Yeah.
to learn and grow as a programmer.
Yeah.
It's those moments that really, help you develop this deep understanding of the problem
Yeah.
and ultimately lead you to a more elegant solution.
I'm starting to see the value in like embracing those failures.
Yeah.
But let's get practical.
Okay.
The blog post outlines some helpful strategies for putting trial and error into action. And the first one is start simple.
Love it.
And they even provide a simple function called find max to illustrate this point.
Right? And that find max function?
Yeah.
It helps you grasp that core logic of finding the maximum value in a set.
Right.
It's about understanding the problem at its essence before you just dive into optimization.
So it's like laying that foundation.
Exactly.
Like if you're building a house, you wouldn't start with the fancy decor before making sure you have a solid base, right?
Absolutely.
So build that solid base and then you can layer on the complexity. The blog's next strategy is analyze and improve.
Okay.
And they use the same find max function to show how a simple solution might struggle. If you're constantly updating the data.
Right.
And that's where they introduce the idea of a max heap.
I love max heaps. So you can think of a max heap like a well-organized priority list.
Yeah.
It's a data structure that's designed to efficiently keep track of the largest value, even when things are changing constantly.
No.
So if your find max function needs to handle frequent updates,
Right.
a max heap can really boost the performance.
Gotcha.
And the code that they provide, that max heap code, it really beautifully demonstrates this improvement.
So instead of like sifting through a jumbled mess every time, the max heap keeps things nice and tidy, making it really quick to find what you need.
Exactly.
That's really clever.
It is. And this actually leads us to their next strategy. Visualize.
Ooh. Okay.
Think about all those times you've been staring at lines of code,
Yeah.
just trying to figure out why something isn't working right.
Oh, yeah.
The blog suggests using visual tools like debuggers.
Right.
Or even, simple print statements to see your algorithm's behavior step by step.
Yeah. You can see it in action.
Yeah.
They provide an example using bubble sort code and adding visualization to it. That must be so helpful to understand what's happening as the algorithm runs.
Absolutely. Visualization can be such a game changer when you're trying to understand how all those elements in your code interact.
Yeah.
It can help you identify any unexpected behavior or those bottlenecks that might be slowing things down.
It's like having X-ray vision.
Totally.
Now, what if you come up with a few different solutions?
Okay.
How do you know which one is really the best?
Right. The blog mentions benchmarking. What is that?
So benchmarking is basically setting up a race between your algorithms.
Okay.
So you run them with different data sets under various conditions.
Yep.
And then you measure their performance to see which one crosses the finish line first.
Okay.
The blog uses examples like linear search and binary search
Right.
to show how to benchmark and then choose the best algorithm.
So it's not just about finding a solution that works.
Right.
It's about finding the solution that works best for your specific situation.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the importance of considering edge cases.
Ooh, yes. Edge casing.
These are like those unique situations, right? That can really trip up your algorithm if you haven't anticipated them. The blog uses a simple divide function to illustrate this.
Yeah, good example.
So I'm guessing this is about like thinking about those scenarios that might not be immediately obvious but could cause problems down the road.
Yeah, like dividing by 0.
Yeah, yeah. Or handling negative numbers when you're not expecting them. It's exactly.
As life
Those edge cases, they often reveal weaknesses in our logic.
Oh, okay.
And by testing our algorithms with these unusual scenarios, we can create solutions that are more robust.
It's like you're making sure your algorithm can handle anything you throw at it,
Yeah.
even the curveballs.
Totally.
And you don't have to go through this whole process alone, right, Vin?
No.
The blog emphasizes collaborating
Yeah,
and seeking feedback from others.
it's so important. Whether it's a peer or a more experienced developer, getting a fresh perspective can be so valuable.
2 heads are better than 1,
For sure.
especially when you've been staring at the same problem for hours.
Totally.
So we've covered why trial and error is important, and we've gone over some practical strategies.
Yeah.
But how does this all apply to different types of algorithms?
That's a great question. Let's dive into the specifics.
So how does this trial and error approach actually play out when you're dealing with like different types of algorithms? You know, those classic ones you learn about in computer science.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The blog post actually goes into a few specific types,
Okay.
starting with greedy algorithms.
Okay, remind me, what is a greedy algorithm again?
Okay, so imagine you're like faced with a choice at every step,
Mm-hmm.
and you always pick the option that seems the best right now
Okay.
without like worrying too much about the long-term consequences.
Right.
That's the essence of a greedy algorithm.
Okay.
They're often super simple to implement,
Right.
but they might not always lead to the absolute best solution overall.
So it's like going for the quick win,
Yeah,
even if it means you might miss out on something better later on.
exactly. And the blog gives a really good example.
Okay.
Using this function, they call it coin change greedy,
Okay.
where you're trying to make change using the fewest coins possible.
Right. Right.
And at each step, you just grab the largest coin that'll fit.
Okay.
But sometimes that greedy approach, it might lead you to use more coins
Interesting.
than if you thought a bit more strategically.
So even though those greedy algorithms can be tempting because they are easy to understand,
Yeah.
it sounds like trial and error is really crucial for uncovering their limitations and exploring other approaches.
Absolutely. And that leads us really nicely into another algorithm paradigm.
Okay.
Dynamic programming.
Okay. Dynamic programming, I've heard of it.
Yeah,
It always sounded kind of intimidating.
I know. It sounds scary, but it's not too bad.
Can you break it down for me?
Yeah. So think of it like you're breaking down a complex problem
Mm-hmm.
into smaller pieces, these smaller subproblems.
Okay.
And you solve those, and then you store their solutions
Okay.
and use those stored solutions to solve the big problem.
So it's kind of like divide and conquer, but with a twist.
Yeah, you got it. You're not just solving the smaller problems.
Right.
You're remembering those solutions to avoid doing redundant work.
Yeah. That's really clever.
It is. And the blog actually showcases this
Okay.
using a function called Fibonacci date.
Okay.
And that calculates the Fibonacci sequence
Right.
using dynamic programming.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
through trial and error, you might realize that you can actually optimize this even further
Really?
by storing just those essential values to make it even more space efficient.
So even when you think you have a good solution,
Yeah.
there's always room to make it better.
Always.
That's the beauty of trial and error.
Yeah, I love that.
Now, what about divide and conquer?
Ooh, yes.
Divide and conquer.
Another classic strategy.
Yeah. It's a super powerful technique where you break down the problem
Mm.
into these smaller, self-similar sub-problems.
Okay.
You solve them independently, and then you combine their solutions to solve the original problem.
Okay. The blog uses merge sort as an example of this.
Oh, yeah. Perfect example.
You split a list into smaller lists, you sort them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you merge them back together in order. Exactly. And what's really cool is that trial and error,
Yeah.
it can actually help you fine-tune these classic algorithms even further.
Really?
Yeah. Like, for example, you could play around with different pivot strategies
Right.
in quicksort,
Right.
or explore ways to optimize that merge operation in merge sort.
So it's like taking those tried and true algorithms and giving them your own personal touch to make them even more efficient.
Absolutely. That's what I love about trial and error.
Yeah.
It allows you to move beyond just understanding these algorithms to like really mastering them.
Okay. This is making a lot of sense.
Good.
But I gotta admit, as much as I love this idea of trial and error,
Yeah.
I also know it can be super frustrating sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
You know, when you hit a wall and you feel like you're going in circles,
Yeah.
The blog post doesn't shy away from these challenges, right?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
They actually have a whole section dedicated to these obstacles.
Okay.
And it's so important to acknowledge those feelings of frustration
Yeah.
because they're totally normal.
Right. So how do we deal with those moments when we're feeling stuck?
Yeah,
Do they offer any advice?
they do. And their advice is really spot on. They remind us that these setbacks,
Yeah.
they're not failures. They're actually chances to learn and grow.
Okay.
So instead of getting bogged down by that feeling of, I'm not getting this,
Yeah.
that they encourage us to shift our perspective.
Right.
Embrace those errors as feedback.
Like every mistake is a step closer to success.
Exactly.
Okay. But sometimes it's hard to see it that way in the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Do they have any practical tips for how to actually put this into practice?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
One thing they suggest is keeping a log
Okay.
of your attempts and what you've learned from each one.
Oh, interesting.
It's like documenting your journey.
Yeah.
So you can see how far you've come
Okay.
and identify those patterns.
So instead of letting those failed attempts fade away,
Yeah.
we're turning them into data points that can help us improve. I like that. What else did they recommend? That's a great point. It's easy to get so caught up in the struggle.
But it might not be the absolute best.
Gotcha. So it's like we've optimized for our little valley,
Yeah.
but we haven't explored the whole landscape.
Totally.
What's the antidote for that kind of tunnel vision?
Well, they suggest periodically stepping back
Okay.
and, reconsidering the problem from scratch.
Okay.
Take a fresh look, maybe after a break,
Mm-hmm.
and ask yourself, are there any assumptions I'm making that might be limiting me?
Yeah. Like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Exactly. And they even suggest, trying a different algorithmic paradigm altogether.
Oh, okay.
If you've been kind of hammering away at it with a greedy approach,
Yeah.
maybe try dynamic programming or divide and conquer.
Right. Right.
See if those techniques offer a better fit.
So it's recognizing when you might be in a rut
Yeah,
and be willing to step outside your comfort zone.
exactly.
Okay. Now let's talk about something that we all struggle with. Inefficient use of time.
Oh, yes, time.
Trial and error can sometimes feel like this meandering path, right? And you might find yourself going down these rabbit holes or spending way too much time on approaches that just aren't working.
Right.
Any advice for staying efficient?
Yeah, so they recommend actually setting time limits
Oh.
for each approach that you try.
Oh, interesting.
It's about creating those boundaries
Right.
so you don't get bogged down in one direction.
That makes a lot of sense because it's so easy to lose track of time when you're focused on the details.
Totally.
Having those constraints can force you to make decisions and move forward,
Mm-hmm.
even if it means abandoning an approach that's not really working out.
Exactly. And they also recommend adopting a more systematic approach.
Okay.
Kind of like the scientific method.
Right.
Formulate a hypothesis about your approach,
Mm-hmm.
test it out,
Yeah.
analyze the results,
Mm-hmm.
and then refine based on your findings.
So you're bringing structure to the process.
Exactly.
So instead of just randomly trying things,
Mm-hmm.
you're being very deliberate. Totally, totally.
That leads us to the last challenge they talk about, overlooking theoretical foundations.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of experimenting
Yeah.
and forget that there's this whole body of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
about algorithms and data structures that can really help us.
For sure.
How do we strike that balance?
So they advise us to balance that practical work
Yeah.
with studying the theory.
Okay.
So after you experiment,
Mhm.
you gather your results.
Yeah.
Take some time to reflect on how your findings align with those established principles.
Right. That's a great point because sometimes your practical experience can actually lead to new insights
Absolutely.
or even expose gaps in
That-
the theory.
For sure.
It's like a two-way street.
Yeah, totally.
Practice informs theory, and theory informs practice.
I love that.
Okay, so we talked about the challenges, but what about the tools? I mean, we have more than just our brains to rely on these days. What does the blog say about using modern tools to make this whole process easier? Oh my gosh, yes. We are so lucky to live in an age where technology can really assist us.
Yeah.
And the blog highlights some really powerful tools
Okay.
that can make trial and error much smoother.
Yeah.
They start by talking about AI-powered code suggestions.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine having like a coding buddy
Mm-hmm.
who's like whispering helpful hints in your ear
Yeah.
as you're coding.
I've heard really good things about things like GitHub Copilot.
Oh yeah, Copilot's great.
It's like having this super smart assistant who's always there to help you out.
Totally. And along with that, AI assistance.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about automated testing frameworks.
Right.
These tools can save you so much time and effort by running your code
Yeah.
against like various inputs in those edge cases automatically.
Yeah, they give a good example.
Mm.
Using the is prime function to show how this works.
Yeah, it's like having a dedicated quality assurance team,
Right.
just making sure everything works.
Exactly. And if you're trying to optimize your algorithm, the blog also mentions performance profiling tools.
Oh yeah, those are awesome. They help you pinpoint those bottlenecks in your code
Oh, okay.
that might be slowing things down.
So instead of just guessing,
Totally.
you can actually see where the inefficiencies are.
Exactly. Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about version control.
Ah, yes, our trusty friend Git.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah,
So you can experiment freely and not be afraid to break things.
for sure.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored, the power of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about why it's so important to be strategic, how to deal with those common challenges, and even how to use those modern tools.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's one piece missing.
Okay.
What's the big picture? How does the blog wrap all this up?
So their conclusion is beautiful.
Mm.
They emphasize that, embracing this trial and error.
Yeah.
It's not just about, finding the right answer.
Right.
It's about continuous learning and improvement.
It's not about being perfect. It's about the process.
Exactly. And they remind us that, the goal is to develop this problem-solving mindset.
Yeah.
That will serve you well
Right.
throughout your journey as a programmer.
I love that because it takes the pressure off
Yeah.
finding that one perfect solution
Exactly.
and encourages us to embrace the messy, iterative nature of this.
I love how they frame it as a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey of growth
Yes.
and discovery.
What a great way to wrap up this discussion.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And as they say in the blog, happy coding.
Happy coding. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into trial and error in algorithms. Big thanks to Algo Academy for this insightful blog post and to you for joining us. Now we'd love to hear from you. What's a problem that you've been stuck on, and how could you use the trial and error strategies that we discussed today? Give it a try and see where it takes you. Until next time, keep diving deep.